Hello, welcome guys. Welcome to this one more video on AWS migration. Migration is a very vast topic. We can talk a lot uh, about migration. There are different stages in migration, and there are different types of migration also. So it's not just to migrate the existing landscape by using lift and shift, but sometimes Uh, there are some modifications like refactoring, uh, rehosting, uh, and restaging, rehosting, retain, resale. So these are the 6R that we need to work um, when we talk about the AWS migration. So migration is a very complex area, but yet very interesting area also. So let's talk about AWS migration. What is that? What are the what are the steps basically, apart from what is mentioned in the AWS documentation? So I'm going to talk about the real world experience about the AWS migration so that you guys can get some idea about the migrations because you know uh, seeing or watching the videos or going through the documentation, AWS documentation is a different thing to understand you know the migration. But when we look at the real world experience, if somebody is sharing the real world experience, then it's make a different sense. So I'm gonna share the few the few slides that what we did during our migration. Here I'm talking about the migration of one .NET application which was on-prem, and then it would move to the AWS in AWS side through containerization. So a migration is not only it's not only the data, database or application, but it's a whole as an infrastructure you are migrating to the cloud. So let's talk about the few things about these migration and that how we can uh, you know club those things in specific step, right? Okay. So let me start with the some beautiful slides. So when we talk about migration, there are three, large steps, or you can say very high level steps. One is assess, the second is mobilize, and the third one is migrate and modernization. When we talk about the 6R, those 6R comes in the mobilize state that retain, refactor, um, reconfigure, replatform, those rehost. These are the 6R that we will talk about. Those things are from a mobilized state. So there are actually on top very high level. There are three steps: assess, mobilize, and migrate. So what do you mean by assess, and what are the things we do in assess? So the first stage of your migration that helps you to determine how prepared you are when it comes to the migration, and what are the things you need to do. Enable some setting up some goal and subjective, present and effective business cases. So these are the things that uh, you need to set during the assessment, during the assess stage. And there are definitely some services are associated with these every step. So for this assess step, assess, the AWS migration is a service. AWS migration is a service related to this stage. So this stage basically it's nothing that you are going to um, go to the client space and checking whether this migration is possible or not. So those things are not part of that, but enabling the goal and setting the objectives, this is the part of that of this stage. And this is the AWS migration services there. AWS migration evaluator and AWS migration hub. There are two services here. So AWS migration evaluator and AWS migration hub. So what do you mean by evaluator is that it will evaluate and giving you some report that if you proceed with the migration, what would be the challenges and what are the steps you need to take very high level, or what are the things you need to fix before you start the migration. And there's a migration hub is a in a central use cases where different clients they have already performed similar operation that you can learn from them or you can learn from their use cases or their experience. So in this cloud environment, the cloud world, always look for similar use cases. If you are looking for specific use cases or you're trying to solve some problem, then always look for a similar use case, which some other clients are already, already face those challenges. Based on that, you can learn. So don't need to invent the wheel every time. That's an intention here. So assess is the first step. Now let's talk about the mobilize thing. Mobilize, you know, it it's a migration planning strategy. It basically tell you that how we are going to migrate uh, your your applications, your data, and other stuff. There are three parts. One is data, your application, and your middleware. So it help to define the migration strategies, what is a relocate, rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, and retain. So each R will tell you the different story, and maybe each R, all the R's may be not applicable to your project, but some R definitely will be applicable to your project. So identify any skill gap in your workforce also that will this mobilize thing will tell you that, and definitely it's AWS that discovery service that will discover all the applications uh, on your on-premises on-prem data center. And the other part is that AWS control tower. The control tower is the service that helps you to build a similar environment in AWS as a landing zone. The landing zone means you are, let's say, you are traveling from London to New York. So when the plane take off from London, there is a some preparation that needs to be done at New York airport, right? So that's what we call as a landing. So before it lands, definitely the landing preparation, landing zones, we are creating a landing zone so that landing should be smooth. The all the efforts and intention is that landing should be smooth. So in order to do that, in order to set your accounts similar to what we have in our on-prem or at the source side, you need to build similar, on-prem accounts and account, this different kind of a hierarchy of your account, like OU, then organizational structure in AWS. It should be similar to your on-prem thing. So AWS Control Tower will help you to do that. And then we have migrate and modernize. This is the actual step where rubber touches the road. So you used to design your deployment and solution, identify any dependencies, uh, and understand the interconnectivity required between the AWS services. So these services are well connected with each other. The interconnectivity with the um, between the AWS services and validation of your design also. So what are the service we use here? AWS migration service used for servers, DB, and application. So AWS application discovery service, AWS database migration service, and AWS transfer control, AWS data sync, AWS Snow, AWS services for control tower, and AWS other services like, for example, AWS cloud build services. So these are the services. It's all about services, by the way. It's all API based services. So these services will help you to, connect with your applications also. So AWS migration services used for migration of the data. So migration evaluator is there. So migration evaluator, what it does is it provides it will provide you some sort of baseline that will help you to understand your on-prem environment, right? So project cost, something which is the second thing is the cost. Using cost modeling and the data analysis, accelerating your successful digital transformation migration to the AWS. So migration evaluator is the first thing that you need to get into that. So it helps to keep the expenditure low throughout your migration process, uh, identify the recommendations of resources, sizing, CPU usage, memory usage, uh, processor, RAM, and OS. Migration Evaluator can help you to reduce the overall cost by 50%. Means it will tell you that instead of this service, you can use some other services that will reduce your cost. Unless until somebody tell you that, okay, this path is more economical or effective, uh, you wouldn't be able to save that much money unless you are, you know, in you have already performed multiple migrations in the similar environment. Even though the environments are same, uh, the two clients have the totally different experience with even though the similar environment. So these services will help you. These services will guide you throughout your uh, you know migration, and it will try to save some cost over there, so you can reduce your overall cost on for migration up to 50%. So quite a lot of money that you can save. So in this diagram, you can see there's a migration evaluator. So on the right hand side, you have uh, migration hub and uh, a quick insight report is there. So that will generate the report. So here we have all the data center. You have big data center on which you run this evaluator. So data collection run every 2 weeks, and this is the agentless connector. And this evaluator will provide the data to the migration hub. And this is the quick insight reports highlighting the recommendation, project, and expected cost, those things, and the recommendation basically. Recommendations, why recommendations are very important is uh, we normally, you know, when the environment it gets stable, we normally ignore the recommendations because we know that now it's good doing good and we know how it works. Then we normally ignore the recommendation. But this recommendations comes from if the vendor and the source company, I mean the company like Amazon is recommending something, then we need to take it very seriously about that recommendation. And it works well. You can say that you can save a lot of money over there. So business stakeholders can download one-page summary showing the cost analysis data and the data usage pattern. See these things, this report will tell you that okay, you are doing this one, but recommended way is to, use some other way to reduce the cost. And that will give you the analysis. And also it will provide you the detailed analysis about also individual for technical audience showing the data for per server level, how much data will transfer, and so forth. So the to request the additional information than what is provided, you can reach out to the AWS client manager, account manager, that will, or TDM, you can say. They will provide you the more details about that. So migration hub, there are different services. Evaluator is there, then a migration hub is there that provides a dashboard overview of your migration project. What is going on? How much cost we are saving? Cost saving is there. Act as a nerve center of your migration. So migration hub is a nerve center means where you will see everything. You can get the update on everything, discover, migrate, and existing service into the different location. It's kind of a dashboard for your entire migration plan. And what are the things we cover? And what are the things you can see uh, when you uh, connect with the AWS Migration Hub? So central hub for your migration project, accessed from the AWS Management Console, used to discover and manage your migration. If any migrations are going on, then you can this one will discover that the the migration plan. Integrate well with other AWS managed services, get, discover, and audit your server inventory, and used to manage and track the migration of the services. It's a kind of a, you know, the dashboard you can say for AWS the entire migration. So what are the service are integrated with the you know with the migration hub? So first is a migration hub import evaluator, migration evaluator collector, AWS agentless discovery connector, and AWS application discovery agent. A migration strategy, AWS application discovery service, and AWS control tower. So application discovery service and these services, mainly the agentless discovery connector, application discovery agent, and migration evaluator collector. See these services, if you know, if you see those services, these services will find out what's going on, what are the applications are a good candidate for a migration. First of all, it will tell you that how many applications are there, and then based on that application, it will get say green, yellow, red. If it is a red, then definitely you need to work with AWS to migrate it. And control tower, what the use of control tower is to create the landing zone for the migration. Landing zone means the similar architecture of your, you know, the accounts, the main accounts, and all the subsequent uh, creation of IAM roles, and one is a root account, and below that OU, and then below that organizational unit and other organizational units. So there's something those hierarchy needs to be recreate here. So application discovery, it's a very interesting part. Now, why it is interesting? Because it will give you some hidden, you know, hidden messages also about that application. First of all, if the application doesn't have any, licensing or anything, then it will tell you about the story about it. It will tell you the details about that application. So AWS Application Discovery Service will connect with your uh, AWS Migration Hub, and along with that, it will connect to the Athena and QuickSight also that generate the report, the fancy report about your applications. What are the applications you are running? Whether they are really a good candidate for migration, what are the challenges over there? So all those details will be there in that report. Now there are two types of agents if you want to collect the data uh, from the source or from the data center which is on-prem data center. Either you can install the agents or there's a agentless thing also there. But agentless things is only it's only for VMware. If it is not in the VMware, then you need to go with the agent-based discovery. So agent is installed across your fleets of servers, then it will, collect the data and then it will send it to the migration from agent will connect the data and it will go to the, as a part of the application discovery services, and application discovery services will send it to the migration hub. Agentless is only for VMware thing. So agentless directly, connect to the OVA, means the image, and from there it will go to the from discovery services and go to the migration services. Now we talk about AWS Control Tower. What is that? Essentially, it is it will help you to create the landing zone for that. Essentially, for deploying a multi-account strategy using the landing zone. A landing zone, from the definition says, it's a multi-account architecture that allows or that follows the well-architected framework, and it is based around the idea of security, compliance, and best practices. The created for the series of blueprints. So, configuring access, security, including federation and overall account infrastructure. So this is how we, create the landing zone for a new migration, and you can attach this SSO also. So learning a migration challenge or a migration thing, it's a really exciting thing. It's not a boring thing because a lot of things you are moving from one place to another place, and you are while moving you realize that rather than moving, it's better to refactor to make it more future proof, war ready, war tested, you can say, because the technology is continuously challenging you. uh, if you have an old legacy mindset or uh, application, then it will be very difficult for those applications to get in the decoupled architecture of a new microservices based architecture. It's early is a fine, if you're like an early bird or on time is always good. But if you're late, then you need to pay the penalty. So migrate and modernize, there are two different aspects of migrate and modernize. So when you say migrate means we are as is migration is going on, means whatever is there, we are just want to migrate it to your on-prem uh, to the cloud. For that, we need to have migration services, database migration services, and AWS service catalog, the server, database, and application. When it comes to the modernization, means definitely you are doing some refactoring, rescaling, rehosting those things. The AWS transfer family, AWS data sync, these are the data migration services that we will talk about that. Well, application migration means the service that helps to migrate your application to AWS with the minimum downtime. Recommended solution migration your application to use to AWS using the cloud endure. So to convert your existing physical and virtual machines to running natively across AWS infrastructure using an agent. So help you to keep the cost. Once your servers have been migrated, you can leverage the AWS cloud to further optimizing your infrastructure. So there is a service to convert your existing applications um, to microservices. Replication settings, the staging and subnetting area, instance type, EBS volume, EBS encryption, security group. See, these are the things that you need to know about your uh, target, you know, the target area, right? Launch settings, instance type, right sizing, private IP address, transfer of the server logs, OS licensing, when the instance should be launched, and those things. That will come into the picture. We'll talk more about during the training, or during the lab when we migrate any sample applications to the cloud. Then we will talk more about that. But there are two migration. One is the agent based and one is an agentless. As I said earlier, agentless is only for VMware. So suppose this is the source and this is the destination, then this is the DMS migration, and the database migration service will help you to migrate the data from the source to target. The schema structure, data type, and code. It will create a similar schema over here, and then migrate the data from the source to target. So when running a migration, you must specify your source and destination database target. A replication instance will be created, which is effectively a EC2 instance, which one or more replication does. So endpoint are used to connect to your source data source and your destination target data store. So replication tasks are then move data from data source set from your source to your destination target. What the one more service that will talk more in details about is a service catalog. Now you can ask me what do you mean by service catalog. So when you develop in an organization, the purpose of making provisioning and creating IT stack, this main reason for this one is to make your life easier, to make it easier for both the end user as well as your IT admin. Stacks, creating a stacks can include instances, database, software, and all underlying infrastructure to create multi-tiered application and the infrastructure. So that's all about AWS Service Catalog. So a set of pre-approved AWS services can assist a single AWS services, resources, products be listed on the AWS marketplace and upload stacks in the AWS cloud formation. Means ultimately you want to build some infrastructure, then you use the AWS Service Catalog. So we have a list of products that we are going to deploy on AWS, but who will decide that who will access these products? So AWS accounts and AWS account will connect to the AWS catalog, and then AWS catalog will create the portfolio, and then from portfolio it will you can they will decide that who will access those products. Data sync, there are multiple ways to push the data to the cloud. One is your S3, one is your EFS, one is your FSX, and one is your Snowcone. From S3, we can use the AWS transfer family um, that will connect to the EFS. Supported protocol SFTP, FTP, S2, and FTP. So data transfer is basically is carried out without your provisioning your own infrastructure. Utilize its own transfer protocol enable instances, high availability services, managed file transfer. There are different ways. There are maybe in every 6 months they are coming up with their own new solutions. So one is the managed file transfer workflow. So and Snowcone is for a small 1 terabyte of data, 100 terabytes of data, 1 petabyte of data, and 1 exabyte of data. For all these different sizes of data, we have different container. We have different solutions: Snowcone, Snowball, and Snowmobile to move the data from on-prem to AWS and sometime from AWS to on-prem as well, like storage gateway, like file gateway, like cached volume gateway. So these are you know, the services that will help you to get the data, get it from, like you get the data from on-prem to AWS at some time from AWS to on-prem as well. So Snowcall, Snowball, and Snowmobile is the best thing. These are the things. So I think it is gonna be more interesting if you know, if we would discuss those things in our next lecture. So this lecture is it's just to give you the introduction uh, about the migration because a lot of request comes to understand what is migration is all about. So people talk more about migration and 6R and those things, but these are the service that plays very important role uh, during the migration service. And each and every service, by the way, is very unique and well integrated with other services also. So we'll talk more about that in our next session. But for this session, I think we are good. And if you have any question, concern, then you can contact me or contact my team, and we will be happy to assist you. Thank you, guys.